we could start transmitting in high definition in 6 months. The problem is, at the moment, there are no TV sets for us to transmit into.
Right now, the only companies making those sets are Japanese, which is why some in Congress warn that if the federal government doesn't take a more active role in developing HDTV, we could wind up losing that market just as we lost the VCR.
The problem is that the United States government has, in fact, had blinders on, not only with regards to planning for the long term, but with regard to what our rivals are doing in exploiting the American market. In the 1970s, it was automobiles. In the 1980s, it was VCRs. In the 1990s, it's HDTV, where our foreign rivals targeted these very important central worldwide industries. And our industry, thinking short term, did not make the kind of investment that would make it possible for us to be on the playing field in a competitive way.
In the 25 years that you have been working on HDTV, how much money has NHK spent?
NHK has spent about 150 million US dollars. We spent such amount of money during the 25 years.
While NHK financed the basic research, Japanese corporations have invested heavily in HDTV, $750 million, with considerable assistance from their government. In Japan, the government sets industrial policy through its Ministry of International Trade and Industry, called MITI. MITI works with the private sector, coordinating business activities to meet national priorities. That's not the way it works in America. Here, private industry makes business decisions independent of the government, or at least they have up to now.
Lately, many in this country, including some in Congress, say we need a MITI in the United States. They are calling for a national industrial policy. And while that may sound inconsistent with free American enterprise, it is also being championed by a number of corporate leaders.
Among the most vocal, Jerry Perlman, Chief Executive Officer of Zenith, the only major American-owned TV manufacturer left.
High-definition television in Japan didn't get here by a whole bunch of corporations making major investments. It got here by an investment by NHK, which is the Japanese broadcasting system, which is owned by the government. And what we have to realize is that that's the world in which we're competing. If we want that kind of manufacturing base, we better figure out how to compete the same way.
Zenith wants to make the new TV sets Americans will be buying. And its CEO thinks the U.S. government should speed up the process by giving seed money to his and other U.S. corporations.
How do you explain to people who see big business and corporations as kind of over there and government is over there that suddenly big business is looking to the government for a handout? Is that fair?
I don't think it necessarily, I don't think it ought to be a handout at all. They ought to give the money, and if the venture is successful, then they ought to get their money back with a return on investment.
Perlman told us that without government help in HDTV development, the U.S. could be shut out of whatever technology grows out of HDTV, particularly advanced semiconductors, the tiny silicon chips at the heart of everything from computers to defense weapons. But despite growing concern, we still have no overall effort, like the Japanese, to develop the new technology and perhaps regenerate the American television industry.
HDTV is coming to our country in the early 1990s. In one manner, shape, or form, it's going to arrive. The only question is what role will the American government, the American people play in enjoying the benefits of that technology.
And we lost, in simple terms, we lost the VCR to Japan. That was a marketing decision that had grave economic consequences on both sides of the ocean. Is the same thing going to happen with HDTV because you got there first?
I'm not an economist. I'm not an industry man, so I cannot say about such things. But anyway, that is not our problem, your problem, you know. So it's up to you, entirely up to you.
Well, then, what's going to happen?
Barbara, there are a number of solutions that have been proposed. More than a dozen American companies, including Apple, Zenith, IBM, are talking about forming a partnership, maybe to bring HDTV to this country sooner. The Pentagon is putting up $30 million for research money, and the House is about to hold hearings to try to figure out how to coordinate business and government in this, to try to do something.
But even if all of these things happen, isn't it too late with the Japanese so far ahead?
They are certainly far ahead of us, and it is true, as we said, that NHK is going to be doing regular transmissions in a year, and as many different things as we do in this country, we're still at least 2 years behind.
Okay, but we can do something.
Yes.
Now, does that mean if it happens, we all have to throw out all our television sets?
Basically, yes, if you want the better picture. But just the way you could keep your old black and white sets and get programs transmitted in color, but you got them in black and white, you can keep your set and get the HDTV transmissions when they happen, but you won't get the better picture.
So you'll have the picture you have now. You'll have the terrible picture you supposedly have now.
Just what you're seeing right now, right?
We'll see. Thank you, Lynn. Boy, that's fascinating.
Well, still ahead, where do you look for love? Well, these women help you find it in their Rolodex. Bob Brown reports it's just one of the tools of modern-day matchmakers. But next, can the best-selling sleeping pill make a person commit murder? Stone Phillips reports when sleep becomes a nightmare when 2020 continues.